A new report is detailing what it says are the biggest risks facing the globe in 2022, and the findings may surprise you. It's a report that comes from the Eurasia Group. That's a political risk and research consulting firm. Closely watched report. It ranks the top global risks every single year. And the president and founder of Eurasia Group, Ian Bremmer, joins us now to detail this report. We're going in reverse order on the top three, Ian. Number three, midterm elections here in the U.S., a top risk for 2022. How come?
Well, maybe the least of the surprises. This is the most important midterm election in American history. We have January 6th coming up in just a day. And as you know, since the profoundly challenged and elections of 2020, no lessons have been learned at all in the United States. The country is much more divided, and a large number of Americans, some 64% in an NPR poll yesterday, said they thought the United States democracy was in crisis. Unlike countries like Japan and Germany and Canada in the last few months have had very successful elections, the United States has an election process that is increasingly broken, increasingly delegitimized, and the midterm elections, especially if you have a significant win for a Trump-led Republican Party, means that 2024 is going to be seen as illegitimate and potentially a constitutional crisis. In the world's most powerful country, it's hard not to rank that high on your list.
It's deeply worrying. And number two on the list is what you call a techno-polar world. You point out that tech firms are not going to rein in disinformation on their own. And as a result, we have this deeply destabilizing force out there in the world. Why number two on the list?
Well, because these tech companies are increasingly, they're sovereign in virtual space. They're not effectively regulated. They create the world. They create the algorithms. And digital space is becoming more important in the way the economy runs, in the way national security and personal security occurs, and also in the way we receive information. Everybody increasingly is angry about different things involving these tech companies. But if you look over the course of 2022, their power is growing faster than the willingness and the ability of different governments to effectively regulate them. That's even true in a country like China. And so as a consequence, what we call a techno-polar world, where technology companies act as geopolitical actors in ways that matter to international relations and power, is increasingly becoming a disruptive force.
And you mentioned China, and at number three, you mentioned China's zero COVID policy. Why is that?
Oh, no, wait. We got the drum roll. That is number one.
Number one. I'm sorry. You're going in reverse order.
Reverse order.
You mentioned that at the beginning, Tony. Yeah, at number one.
No. It is number one. And, you know, the interesting thing, the pandemic has changed all of our lives so dramatically in the last 2 years. And in the West, we've responded differently as the pandemic has changed. As you know, we have, a lot more people vaccinated, a lot more people boosted. We have increasingly therapeutics that actually work. And this disease is now much more transmissible, but it's less lethal. And that means that we're opening up. And within weeks, it's going to feel endemic in the West. But in China, their policies towards the pandemic haven't changed one iota. And the most effective of the major economies in responding to the pandemic in 2020 was China. They could track, they could trace, they could quarantine, they could lock down. But that's still what they're doing with Omicron. That's a very serious problem for a country where the people don't have a lot of antibodies because almost no one's got COVID, where their own vaccines don't work effectively against Omicron, and where they refuse to license mRNA vaccines from the West, like Pfizer and Moderna. So they're going to be increasingly locked down, and they're going to have a really hard time responding to an extraordinarily transmissible Omicron variant. This is the second largest economy in the world. It's a big driver of global growth. And if you've got those lockdowns persisting this year, you're still going to see the supply chain challenges. You're still going to see the inflation challenges as a consequence. China's COVID policy is actually our top risk for 2022.
All right. Ian Bremmer bringing in the top three things we should be concerned about for global instability. Ian, thank you very much. We'll keep an eye on them.